Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me, as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody tonight?
On Staring, we always try to answer questions. That's kind of what we do here. We take some mystery or some question that mankind has been struggling with for hundreds of years, sometimes thousands of years, and we try to answer it, or at least get as close to an answer as we possibly can. Sometimes we do history type shows where we tell you all about an event and we give all the little details that you won't hear many other places. That's what tonight's show is going to be. We're going to attempt to answer a question that I have wondered for most of my life. This is something that I became obsessed with many years ago. And I tried very, very hard to find the answer. And it's something that was an obsession for a lot of different people as well, to the point to where there's entire groups on the internet that are trying to figure out the answer to this question. Now, this is either going to be an amazing show that you are going to really enjoy, or it's going to be very silly, because this is not a question of utmost importance. It's not like trying to figure out where Atlantis is or something like that. This question is based off the movie Demolition Man. Now, if you're an older feller like me, then I'm sure you know exactly what movie I'm talking about, and you probably already figured out the question. But for the younger people in our audience, Demolition Man was a movie that came out, I believe, in the early 90s. It starred Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes, and Sandra Bullock, and Dennis Leary. Very awesome film. I really enjoyed it. It's one of those shoot 'em up kind of action films that were so popular back then. The basic concept of this is that Sylvester Stallone played a cop who was after this super criminal played by Wesley Snipes. Now, in his time in the 90s, he catches Wesley Snipes, but Wesley Snipes had rigged the building to explode, and there was a bunch of hostages in the building that supposedly were killed by this explosion, and he blamed it on Sylvester Stallone's character, and Stallone went to prison, and Wesley Snipes went to prison. Now, we find out later that the hostages were already dead before the place blew up, because he had killed them before Stallone even got there. But that's neither here nor there. They're both arrested, and at that time, what they were starting to do is people that had life sentences like that, they would freeze them in like a suspended animation kind of cryo freezing kind of deal. So that's what happened to both of these characters. They got frozen for many years. So they wake up in the future because Wesley Snipes' character is defrosted, and he's programmed to kill this underground rebel leader guy. So that's the basic premise of the movie. Now, in the movie, there is a scene in which Stallone has to go to the bathroom, and he comments that there's no toilet paper in the bathroom. And Rob Schneider's character laughs at him and says he doesn't know how to use the 3 shells. So that is what the show is going to be tonight, is what are the 3 shells? Nobody knows how these things work. And they never explain in the movie how the 3 shells work. They replace toilet paper. So you no longer need toilet paper when you go to the bathroom. Now you have these shells. And it's portrayed as everybody in the future knows how to work it, and it's ridiculous that somebody wouldn't. And because he's from the past, he doesn't know. So when I first saw the movie, I waited for them to explain how these damn shells worked. But they never explain it. Now, if you've been on this journey with me on Staring into the Abyss for any amount of time, then you will know that there's not much more in this world that drives me crazy than an unanswered question like that. Because all I was thinking is, well, how do the shells work? You laughed at Stallone because he didn't know how they worked, but you never explained it. How do they work? Now, there's been a lot of people that have come up with a lot of different theories on how they think the shells work. I have reviewed all those theories over the years, and I've come up with my own theory that I'm going to share with you tonight at the end of this when I'm done with all these other theories. And I think that I've kind of cracked this mystery. I think I know how the shells probably worked. But first, I want to start with some of the people that were actually in the movie. Now, both Stallone and Sandra Bullock were both interviewed after this movie came out, and they were asked about the shells because it annoyed a lot of people that we never found out how they worked. Now, Sandra Bullock just kind of sidestepped the question by saying that, what do you mean you don't know how they work? It's obvious how they work. And that's kind of all she would say about the deal. So she never really gave an answer either. But Stallone, he actually gave an answer. Now, he made sure to say that he didn't know how they worked because it was never revealed to them how the shells would have worked. But what he thought they did was there's 3 shells. So he thought you take 2 of the shells and use them like chopsticks to get the bigger bits. And then the other shell you just kind of use as a final cleanup, like a wipe up, to scoop out whatever's left. I know it's kind of gross, and I apologize if you're grossed out, but we're talking about shells that clean you after you go to the bathroom, so you're going to have a little bit of that. But I'll try not to get too graphic or gross with it. But that was his theory on how these shells could have worked, is essentially they work like you would use shells if you were stranded on an island, as a grabbing and scooping tool. Now, I tend to think that that approach would be way too primitive for an advanced society like that. I mean, remember, this is like 60 or 70 years in the future. I don't remember the exact time that had passed before they got defrosted, but it was quite a long time. So I doubt very seriously that would be the answer, because that just seems primitive as hell. Why would scooping it out with a shell work better than toilet paper? That doesn't make sense to me. Toilet paper is much, much better for that purpose. Actually, the best thing that we have available nowadays for that purpose, if you're talking just something to use, is moss. If you're ever out in the woods, that's the best thing in the world. Get some moss, especially in the morning when it's got that dew on it. It soaks up that moisture. It's like a wet sponge. It's glorious. But anyway, that was Stallone's theory on how this worked. I don't buy that at all. I think that's impossible because it's caveman. You know, it's not advanced at all. That doesn't make any sense. Now, there's been a lot of other theories. The best theory I've seen out there, and also kind of the strangest theory I've seen out there, is that the shells themselves have some sort of a suction type property to them to where you can attach them to yourself. According to this theory, what you would do is put 1 shell on each cheek, and then you'd take the 3rd shell and you would place it on your stomach. And supposedly, according to this theory, what would take place is these 3 shells would emit sound waves at a certain frequency. And because of where they're placed, it would form like a pyramid almost. And it would be a resonance that happened that would amplify those vibrations, and it would literally shake everything away. So everything would just shake and fall out. That's that theory. Now that theory, a lot more advanced, a lot more futuristic, so to speak. But I also tend to not think that would be right either, because it just seems kind of complicated. It seems like overkill, way too much technology to be used for that purpose. Now, you had other theories that ranged from laser beams. That was a fun one that I read, where the shells would actually shoot lasers to clean you up, which is, to me, terrifying to think about. If there's any place in the world you don't want lasers firing off, it's in that area, because there's a lot of important stuff down there. And you don't want to do the old Luke Skywalker lose a hand deal in that area at all with a laser beam. Not a smart move. How could the laser tell organic from inorganic material? Let's say it that way so that it doesn't get too gross. How can they tell what's you and what's not you? Because it's going to be burning and slicing through whatever's there to get it to come off. That's kind of the way a high-powered laser would work. So what's to keep it from cutting you? Also too dangerous, too spooky to have in that area. So I don't think that's it. Now, what I think is very possible that it could have been, I use what I call the Jetsons theory on this. Now, I'm going to explain that for you. When I was a kid, I used to watch the Flintstones, and I used to watch the Jetsons. So we had prehistoric man, and we had future man. Now, growing up, I was led to believe that when I got to be old, we would have flying cars that would pack up into suitcases. We would have robots to do our dishes and vacuum our floors. That we would live in a world like the Jetsons. Now, it's funny because when we reach the time that the Jetsons supposedly were in, we don't have any of those things. We've kind of went a different way with it. We really stopped for a significant way, at least, space exploration. We're not mining asteroids. We're not flying around in cars. We can't even get self-driving cars right. They keep running into things. So we're not there. We're not even close to there yet as far as technology. But growing up, I was always led to believe that's what the future would look like. And that's not just from the Jetsons, but if you go to all the world fairs back in the day and you see like the World of Tomorrow posters and all that kind of stuff, it always depicted a Jetsons type of society that would be around in the future. At the time we're at now, we're supposed to be flying around in spaceships and stuff. But it didn't happen. So what basically the Jetsons theory is, what I call the Jetsons theory is, don't expect the future to be so far advanced that you're not going to understand it. When I played music, we had a thing called KISS. Okay? And that's not the band with the makeup and the guy with the long tongue. It was an acronym. It stood for Keep It Simple, Stupid. What that essentially means is when you're writing music, you use basic chords, you find a groove, something that makes people shake their butts. Don't worry about being overly technical. Don't worry about doing 12-fret spreads or any kind of crazy scales. Just make it rock. Keep it simple, stupid. It's that easy. I think that applies here. Now, think about the fact that they are shells and that there's 3 of them. Both of those things, I think, are extremely important to figuring this little mystery out. First of all, shells. Why shells? Well, if you go with Stallone's theory, shells would be very useful for scooping and digging and grabbing. But I don't think that's what it is. I think shells is symbolic because if you look in most bathrooms today, what do they have in them? A basket of shells. Now, I'm not sure where that started or why somebody thought it was a good idea to put seashells in their bathroom, but for whatever reason, that's a thing. That's what people do. I know growing up, my bathroom always had seashells in it for some unknown reason. And we barely ever went to the beach. But it's just something you go and you buy a basket of shells to put in your bathroom. Whenever I would go to a friend's house, same thing. There was always that basket of seashells. So I think the fact that there's shells used there is kind of an homage, a throwback, a tip of the hat to the fact that everybody has shells in their bathrooms. I think that's where that comes from. So now we know why shells. Why are there 3 of them? Why not 2? Why not 1? If it's some sort of sound frequency generator or some sort of laser, why would you need more than 1? You could hold 1 in your hand very nicely. You could get down there like you would with toilet paper and direct it exactly where you need it. It would be fine, just like a compact mirror or something. It would work wonderfully if that was the purpose. Why 3? Well, I think the fact that there's 3 is very, very important, and I think that it is easy, way easier than what we made it. See, everybody was trying to figure this out, and we kept thinking of all these futuristic things. What could it possibly be? Maybe it's a lifesaver. Maybe it's sound generator. Maybe it does this. Maybe it does that. When in reality, keep it simple, stupid. What do we have now? What technology is available today that takes the place of toilet paper? If you've got enough money and you can buy a fancy, fancy toilet with all the bells and whistles, what does that toilet do? Well, we have things like seat warming, automatic seat lifting. When you walk up to it, it has a sensor that the seat will lift. I mean, all that stuff is cool. But as far as cleaning up, the fancier toilets have built-in bidets and dryers that will literally target the exact right spot. I'm not sure how that works. I'll have to look that up someday. But it always knows exactly where to hit you. I mean, it's perfect every time. It's like a bullseye. It never misses. And it doesn't matter who sits on it, it always hits the bullseye. So there must be some kind of sensor, or maybe everybody is kind of the same. When they sit down, maybe it's exactly where it's supposed to be lined up all the time. I don't know. Very interesting idea. I'll have to look into that because now I want to know. But anyway, I digress. Those toilets exist today that have the bidet function. So I think what the three seashells are, my theory on it, is it's simply an extension of the bidet function that we already have today. And the reason it's three shells instead of three buttons is simply as an homage to people having baskets of shells in their bathrooms. It's a decorative thing. Now, why three instead of just two? Because you need water, you need dry. That's all you need, right? I think the three is because the first one is soapy water. It washes you. The second one is clean water that rinses you. And the third one is a dryer. Almost like a hair dryer, but it just kind of blow dries that area. Because you're going to be wet, because you just washed. So you don't want to be wet and drip all into your pants and everything. So you're going to want to dry. Now, you could do that with a paper towel or something, but then that kind of defeats the whole purpose of not using toilet paper anymore, because you're still using paper. So you would have the dryer, like when you go in the bathroom, like at a Walmart or wherever, and you wash your hands, they have the blow dryers on the wall that you put your hands underneath of and you get hot air. That kind of same thing. That's what I think it is. I think one's soapy water, one's clean water to rinse with, and one is to dry. I think it's that simple. I think we've way overthought this. I think for years and years and years, people have been coming out with all these outlandish theories on what it is, and I think it's as simple as a bidet that's decorative for seashells. And in the future, maybe because we've cut down so many damn trees, they're trying to conserve paper and not use it as toilet paper. So they've went to strictly bidets because it does the job without having to waste trees. Maybe that's the reason. Now, I want to say, before I go any further, I realize that the three shells don't actually exist. It's just a movie. It's not reality. I get that. But it's one of those things that bugged me my whole life. I always wanted to know what the hell these three shells were and how they worked. And the fact that they never explained it drove me nuts. But I think I figured this one out. I think that's the answer. So what I want to do is I want to throw over to Old Boy. I want to get his thoughts on the movie because I know he's seen it as well because he's around my age and guys my age, we've all seen it. We all love it. See if he liked the movie, what his favorite stuff was from it, and get his ideas on the different theories and my theory and see if he has a theory of his own. So, Old Boy, go ahead, brother.
And thank you, buddy. This is a very interesting show, guys. When he told me he wanted to do this, I was like, yeah, this is going to be different. Let's say, for one, I've always liked Demolition Man, and it was, I think it's the mid-90s, early 90s, when the three seashell things, and I've always wanted to know what that was for, too. I don't know if we were ever gonna do a show about it, but we are. So here's my opinion, because he was getting into this, what I think they're for. And I'm not going to get into too graphics. Actually, I'll give you a minute. But if you guys ever seen that movie, you go there, he looks at it, he's going to use the restroom, and he sees three seashells, and they sit there and laugh at him because he doesn't know what, he just woke out of a coma, and, he just doesn't know the new world now. I mean, like at Taco Bell, that's like a 5-star restaurant now because that's like one of the last ones that survived the food chain wars, I guess, at that time. And it was like, that was a fancy place to eat. It was Taco Bell. So, they showed these seashells, and he was like, what do I think? I've always wanted to know what it was. This was a great opportunity for this show. So what I think is one of them's for, I think, I don't want to get too graphic, but to wipe. I think the other one's for, or maybe two of them are, or all three of them are, and you use them all three at once. That's all I could think of. Maybe like use water too, but use those and wash them off, or you because you would keep using them over and over. You think about it because you wouldn't, because see back then in that era they were trying to be I guess not use paper, so I guess that's what it would be for, because you're going to keep using it. I'm trying not to be too not to discuss people out of the show, but that's what I think they did, and they probably washed them off because you could keep reusing them. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was for two was for that. Maybe you use water and use another one to wash off. I don't know really. This one's really hard. That's all I could think of on that. What it was used for. That's just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. Like James was talking about a little bit earlier, about how the future, how that could be something in the future coming. That'd be kind of weird, but I could see that because people want to save, like, from using paper and plastic and stuff like that, so they're using this as a new thing. I don't know why that would be chosen out of anything, but wonder what the whole seashell thing is too, or was it just for look? Well, it wasn't for looks. Thinking about it now, you had to use it for the restroom. But I was always thinking if you did use them, you'd have to wash them off somehow. So you just put them in the sink, or you like a place to wash them off or something. If you think about it, after you use the restroom, that was one thing I would think about. How would you even use that? That I'm thinking about this right now, guys, and I'm picturing this right now. And if you went to the restroom and you saw this other than toilet paper, and that's what you saw was three little shells or medium-sized shells, whatever they were. I could imagine how you would use them, but how would you clean them off? Like through the sink, I guess. That's probably why. Maybe they had a system that you, like on the side, you wash it off or something. That's kind of weird to me. I think it's crazy that there's people actually talking about what this is, a big mystery or something about how they use shells instead of toilet paper. But it is kind of interesting because he's right. When I used to see that movie all the time, and I've seen that movie probably about 30, 40 times because it's a good movie, I always wanted to know too. And we're actually doing a show. What's really comical about this, that we're actually doing a show about this. It's making me laugh because I used to wonder the same thing. What the hell were those shells for? But I was younger at the time, and I've watched again. How would you use those? Would you do them sideways? Would you do them front side? Would you do them backwards? I mean, how would you guys? I know you guys are going to listen to the show, and this is going to be a different show. So you guys need to think. Tell me what you think they would be used, and how they would be used, and how would they clean them off? I mean, I know this is a little different show, but if you think about it, it is kind of like a science fiction, because Demolition was science fiction. Demolition Man, sorry, because they got frozen in what 20 years later, or 15 years later, they got unfrozen because the Wesley Snipes is going around killing people because he was programmed out of the ice. But that movie was sci-fi, and it is about the future, so it does fit what we talk about if you think about it. And that's why I was sitting here thinking, if you guys watched the movie, because I know most of you guys have, it's a good movie. And if you haven't, well, try to, some of the younger people who haven't watched it, see that movie, Demolition Man. It's really good. Like James said, it's with Sylvester Stallone, Wesley Snipes. And watch it because it's a good movie. It's funny, entertaining. You guys will get it. You guys will probably have a laugh on it because you can't even swear. The funny thing is when you swear, because we're talking about the future, when you would swear, you would get ticketed. So like he kept swearing and stuff like that, and he got ticketed all the time. And just with the movie altogether, it was just a funny movie. Like the guy's so hungry for hamburgers and stuff, and he goes down in the down in the street where Dennis Leary's at, and Dennis Leary goes off about all these great foods he wants to eat, like fries and stuff. Remember, he's been frozen for like, I think 15 years or something, or 10 years. Or I think it was longer than that. It was like 15, 13 years, somewhere like that. And he's hungry for all this food. And he's talking about fries and greasy gravy and hamburgers, and he hasn't even got to eat that. So like, there's a street vendor that's cooking hamburgers. He's, oh man, it's what a smell! It's a rat burger with a beer, because he hasn't had a beer for so long. He just didn't even care. So I mean, that movie's just great altogether. I know we were talking about the seashells, but I wanted to also talk about the movie. It's a great movie. You guys got to see it if you're in the sci-fi. It's a great movie. It's just cool altogether, because it shows what our future is going to be. That's how we're going to get prisoners. We could have done a show about that. Maybe down the line, are we going to freeze prisoners, that people who've killed people, freeze them for 20 years and let them come back, because that was what their punishment is. That would be kind of crazy if we really did that, if you think about it. Not getting off subject, because he was talking about earlier about the Jetsons and stuff like that, and how we were supposed to have space cars and we're not. It's 2020, and you guys, we don't have space cars. I mean, we have good cars, but they're not flying around like the Jetsons, and we're not flying around in jetpacks and have robots cleaning. Well, actually, they do have robots. They're starting to make those, so that's a little bit true. But not flying houses and flying. We don't live in Mars, and we don't live in different worlds. Maybe one day we might. I mean, we're trying to go to Mars. Maybe one day we can get a whole colony out there one day and live out there and inhabit it, Mars. But I do think that's funny too, because we don't have any flying cars. But if you guys get a chance, see this movie. I don't really know what, I didn't have too much to say. I've heard James talk about it a little bit, but this was great movie. You guys can check it. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. What you think you would do with the shells, or how would you use them, and that's the way they use them for? Are they not for that, the way James said, or how his idea is and what he thinks they're used for? I think it's kind of crazy. I wouldn't do it. Kind of out there to me. I think, wouldn't it hurt? Especially say if you guys were not, but what if you're a woman? Did you use them for that too? I mean, maybe that's what I was going to think, is that 2 shells, and then for women, because men, we don't have to sit down and pee. That just happens. Women, it's different. How would they use it? Was it just for the number 2, or is it for number 1 too? I didn't know if you guys thought about that. Again, that'd be something else. What do you think it would be used for on that way, for if you're a woman? Because I could see them using it 2 different ways. So that's all I got to say, James. Other than that, buddy.
That's why I think my theory is dead on, because the practical idea of using these shells as shells is ludicrous. It would be nowhere near as effective as toilet paper. And one thing that always bothered me when I would watch the movie when I was younger is, at first I think, okay, maybe they're not using toilet paper anymore because they want to conserve the trees, like I said earlier. That could be an issue. But then when you think about it, every time somebody says a curse word, an alarm goes off, and a little sheet of paper comes out of this machine on the wall, a little printer, and it says, like, John Spartan, you are fined 1 credit for violation of the decency standards, or whatever. And he actually makes a joke out of it, and he sits there and says a bunch of curse words into the machine so he can get a bunch of pieces of paper so he can go use them as toilet paper. But if they cared about conserving the trees and not killing the trees, then why the hell do they have all these pieces of paper coming out of the wall all the time? That didn't make any sense to me. So I don't think it was necessarily to try to not use toilet paper because they didn't have the supply of trees to use toilet paper. I think most likely it was simply that they came up with a better technology. And that's why I think my theory is dead on. because that technology already exists today. I mean, I don't think, because remember when you look at the three seashells in the bathroom, when they go into the bathroom, they show them. They are flat on a shelf beside a toilet. It is like a built-in thing. They're not like sitting to where you can see underneath of them. They're not on a shelf all by themselves. That's a little thin thing. It's a substantial little alcove area that they are in. I think they're just buttons. I think they just look like shells. And like I said before, first button, the first shell is soapy water. The second one is regular water, and the third one is a dry. You push the button, and the bidet function of the toilet activates, and it does its thing and cleans you up. I think they're just simply buttons shaped like seashells. I think that's the most simple solution, and I think that that is the right solution. Out of all the theories that I've read online, and trust me, I didn't go over all of them tonight. I only went over some of the ones that I enjoyed the most. But there are dozens and dozens and dozens of these different theories, things that range all the way from the ludicrous to the downright sadomasochistic. There are some really bad ones out there that would make you say, why the hell would anybody do that to themselves? But I think that's what it is. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the freezing aspect of this. Because old boy brought up a point of, do we think that that could happen in the future, that they would freeze prisoners? I doubt it, and I'll explain why. There's a couple reasons why I don't think that's a feasible idea. First and foremost on this list would be, we don't know if it'll work. We don't even know if we can bring people back that have been frozen. There's people that get cryogenically frozen now in hopes that in 100 years, 200 years, whatever, they'll be able to be brought back. But I don't think it's going to work. And the reason is because if you've ever looked at ice, and I'm not talking about open up your cup and look inside your ice water or iced tea or whatever you drink. I mean, take a piece of ice, slice it real thin, and look at it underneath a microscope. See what ice actually looks like. See, we think of ice as smooth because you go out in the winter and you slide on ice and fall down. But first of all, you're not actually slipping on the ice. Ice is not slippery. Ice is actually very sticky. What causes you to slip and fall when you are walking or standing on ice is not the ice itself. It is the friction of your foot on the ice, which is causing heat. That heat melts a very, very small layer at the top of the ice and creates water on top of that ice. That is what you slip on, not the ice itself. Ice itself is extremely sticky. It's not slick at all. So you will not fall on ice, you fall on water. But that being said, if you look at ice underneath a microscope, it is scary looking. It looks like, the best ways to describe this would be a medieval mace, or like some kind of fantasy movie when you go into a cave system and you have the stalactites and the stalagmites, the ones coming up from the ground and the ones coming from the ceiling. That's what ice looks like underneath the microscope. It's sharp, it's pointy, it's spiky. It's going to do a hell of a lot of damage. Now, the reason why I say that, and the reason that is important, is because you have to think about the freezing process. You are freezing the body. Our body is over 70% water. Where is that water located? It's not just the water you drink. Every cell in your body contains water, a lot of water. That water inside each individual cell of your body is going to freeze. So when you freeze that water inside your cells, it goes from what water normally looks like underneath a microscope, which if you've ever looked at a drop of water in science class, you don't have sharp, spiky protrusions everywhere. You have all kinds of things swimming around and living in the water, all kinds of bacteria and little bitty no-see-ums, but you don't have all those spikes. But once you freeze it, that's exactly what you have. Now picture the inside of a cell. full of water. All of a sudden, all that water turns to ice. So that nice, soft, calm water now turns into spiky mace things everywhere. That's going to puncture the outer membrane of that cell. So what you're going to have once you try to actually defrost somebody who's been cryogenically frozen, and this is just a theory because we, to my knowledge, haven't done it, so I don't know what will happen when you do it. But knowing what ice looks like under a microscope, knowing the changes that take place from water to ice, I think that once it becomes ice, it's going to puncture the outer membrane of that cell, of all of your cells. So I think what's going to happen once you defrost that person is they're not going to come back. They're going to be dead. Because all those cells are no longer going to have any kind of structural integrity. So without your cells, you're not going to be alive. There's no way to come back. Now, I don't think it's going to be a literal liquidation of the body. I don't think the body's going to turn to liquid. It's not going to liquefy and melt down off the table, I don't think. But I definitely don't think you're going to be able to be brought back to life, because that would entail literally rebuilding every cell in your body, because they've all been punctured by the ice. So that's the first reason that I don't think that we will ever freeze prisoners as a means for them to serve their sentence and then come back to life. Don't think it's possible. The second reason, and probably an equally important reason for society, is you got to think about who you're freezing. Now, let's say for a moment that you are able to put them in some form of suspended animation. It doesn't necessarily have to be freezing, but let's just say that there's some technology developed that enables you to put somebody in suspended animation for long periods of time, as long as you want. And it's only seconds that pass in that suspended animated state, but years and years and years pass for the rest of the world. That sounds like science fiction as well, but believe it or not, there is some evidence that that technology may have existed in the past, in past civilizations, where they've found different sites that they're thinking maybe there's some crystal chambers that's exactly what was taking place there. And in some of those chambers, supposedly, according to some articles I just read not too long ago, they found some giants that were in suspended animation in those things. I'm going to continue to look into that and see if that is true, or if that is just one of those things that people write sometimes. Because sometimes you have these articles that aren't very true at all. They talk about things, but they don't provide any real proof. So this is something I need to look into more. But if it turns out that it holds any water, I will definitely bring that to you in a future show. But let's say that technology exists, and we know how to use it. So you take a mad dog killer type, somebody who is murdering and raping and wreaking havoc on society, and you give them life in prison, okay, 70 years. You put them in suspended animation for 70 years. Their time is up. You let them go. Now that person is still in the exact same physical condition they were when you put them in. The nice thing about putting these people away in prison for all these years is they get old. So then if they do get out in the future, if they live long enough and they are able to actually get out, they're really, really old people at that point, and they're not that big of a danger to society. Now, old people can still kill you. Don't get that wrong. But they're not going to be running around beating the hell out of people and raising a ruckus like they did when they were in their 20s. Most times they're going to be calmed down a lot. They're not going to hurt as many people. They're not going to be as big a danger as they were. But if you're using suspended animation, when they come out, they're just as young and tough and fit as they were before. So they're going to go right back to raising hell again. So that's another reason I don't think that that'll ever happen. Now, in the movie, while these people are frozen, they are reprogrammed. They are given programming directly into their brains that changes their behavior modification. That also sounds like science fiction, but believe it or not, it is possible. Not the frozen part. That hasn't been done or proven. But there are experiments taking place now where we are able to actually read people's thoughts, tell what they're thinking of, and that research they're hoping will lead to actually being able to program the brain to learn things, like in the Matrix. Remember that scene in the Matrix where Neo is plugged in and then he learns Kung Fu in a couple seconds, and then when he unplugs, he knows how to do Kung Fu? That's something that science is saying now is possible. Now let me break down this experiment for you very quickly so that you can understand what's taking place. We are not at that point yet. Cannot do that at all. But what they can do is there is a series of 2 or 3 pictures. One is a house, one is a car, and one is a dog. Okay, so there's 3 pictures that are entered into this database with the computer. And they have mapped the brainwave of a hell of a lot of people when they are looking at that picture. So they know what that particular brainwave looks like. The computer can recognize it. So what they do is they use an MRI machine and several different probes to measure your brainwaves while you're looking at different pictures. And they can tell what you're thinking of by reading your brainwaves and mapping them. So in other words, they could put you in a room and you could have the 3 pictures in front of you. You could pick up either one of the 3 you want and look at it. And they could be in a different room, not able to see you at all. All they can see is your brainwaves on the computer screen, and they can tell which picture you're looking at because they've mapped that particular brainwave. Very, very crude. It's in its infancy right now. But once that catalog of pictures grows from 3 to 20 to 100 to thousands, once we map more and more brainwaves, it will be possible to know what a person is thinking about simply by reading their brainwaves. Fascinating stuff. They are theorizing that in the future, once we have reached that point to where we can basically read your mind, we will be able to actually implant knowledge into the brain. Think of it as an upload. When you upload a video or a movie clip or a picture or whatever onto your computer, that's essentially what we'll be doing, because the brain is like a biological computer. So the theory here is that once they reach that point and have a better understanding of how brainwaves work and what that language is, they will be able to use that knowledge to actually upload information into your brain and teach you that way. So let's extrapolate that out. That means that they will be able to develop behavior modification programs that they will be able to upload into your brain and alter your behavior. So that part of Demolition Man, science actually exists today that is going to eventually lead to that being a reality. Theoretically, it's possible. There's no reason it can't be possible. We're just not there yet. We haven't figured that out yet, but we're on our way. Fascinating stuff. There's a famous quote that I always think about whenever we do these kind of shows, any kind of paranormal show, really. And that quote is, advanced technology is always indistinguishable from magic to people who don't understand the technology. So if you went back in time to caveman days, or even to the time when they built the pyramids or Middle Ages, and you pulled out a cell phone or a projector or something that could project an image onto a wall, to those people, that would be magic, what you're doing. They would have no way to understand what in the hell you're doing to make that happen. Even something as simple as a lighter would appear as magic to some people if you go far enough back, because they would have no way to understand how you're making fire appear like that. Because back in the oldest days, fire was made the old way with sticks. Later on, it went from a simple hand spindle motion to a bow drill fire. From there, it went to using flint to get sparks, which is essentially how our lighters today work. They have a fuel source and lighter fluid, and they have a flint that makes a spark that will ignite those vapors when you press the thing. That's how lighters work. It's kind of still the same technology that they were using long ago. It's just a little bit better. But if you go far enough back, that seems to be magic. If you had a car, if you were able to take a car back to the time of ancient Egypt or before then, and you drove your car around, they would not know what the hell a car was. That would be magic to them. So the reason I bring that up is a lot of the things that we look at today as paranormal and supernatural, a lot of those things are not make-believe. They're simply things that we don't yet understand enough. To us, they still seem in the same realm as magic or make-believe because we don't understand how they work yet. But as science learns more, we understand more, and then all of a sudden they're not so unbelievable anymore. We see that, I talked about this before, we see that in the fact that scientists are beginning to come out now and say that ghosts exist, and that the soul exists, and that your soul can live on after you die forever in the form of a ghost. You have actual scientists that are saying that now, and there are studies that prove it. You go back 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, that was laughable. If you would have said in the 1980s that ghosts were real as a scientist, you would have been laughed out of the building. You would have never been published again. You'd have lost your teaching job. They wouldn't have taken you seriously at all. But now, science has progressed to the point where all of a sudden that's not magic anymore. That's not unbelievable. It's fact. And I think as time goes on, we're going to see more and more things that are going to do exactly that. Things that today we look at and most people say, oh, that's BS. There's no way that's real. Given enough time, science will find the answer. And all of a sudden, that make-believe thing will be real. We're going to see that with a lot of the crypto creatures. We're going to see that with Bigfoot. I honestly believe that. Is eventually somebody is going to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that Bigfoot exists. There are scientists out there who are actively looking into it. Now, if you go back 30, 40 years and you said you believe Bigfoot exists, you'd have been laughed out the building, just like with ghosts. But now there are scientists who are actually trying to prove that Bigfoot exists. You have biologists, you have specialists, people that specialize in primate feet, all kinds of different specialities that are actively searching for Sasquatch, who believe it exists and who are trying to prove that it exists. And I think you're going to see that with a lot of different things. Remember, there were a lot of creatures that were cryptids. They were creatures that did not exist according to science. And if you believe they exist, people laughed at you. The silverback gorilla was one of them. That was a mythical creature that did not exist. It was something out of local folklore and legend that mainstream science said did not exist, that you're crazy if you believe it. And then they found them in the Congo, and now they're a recognized species. The coelacanth was a marine creature that supposedly went extinct millions of years ago. And if you believed they were still out there, you were crazy. Until one washed up on the shore of Madagascar. Now all of a sudden we know that they actually still exist. The giant squid was something out of sea legends. Legends of sea monsters, the kraken, those kind of things. Didn't exist. If you believed it, once again, you were crazy. Until they've actually captured footage of giant squids. And then they captured a few in nets. Now we know the giant squid exists. It's a recognized species. Are you noticing a pattern here? This happens over and over and over again. I believe we're going to see that exact same pattern repeat itself with the megalodon shark. The megalodon shark is an ancient species of shark that is the size of a school bus. That is something that lived in prehistoric times. There has been sightings throughout the years, and even within the last year or two, there's been sightings of megalodon in the ocean. There have been sharks that have washed up and that have been captured that have gigantic bites out of them. I think we're closing in on proving that the megalodon shark is still out there as well. All of these things I think will be proven someday by science. But in the meantime, you're going to have people that laugh at you. That's just the way it works. So if you're in this field and you're doing this work, don't let that bother you. Because time will prove you correct or not. But on a lot of things, I think you'll be proven correct. We are pretty much out of time. So I'm going to throw it back over to Old Boy for a quick shout out, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Thank you, brother. And I hope you enjoyed the show, guys. It was something different. We're going to try to do some different stuff. Thank you guys on ParaX. We love you guys every Sunday. I'm glad you listen to us. I'm glad you guys listen to us every Sunday. And if you guys want to listen to all our old shows or tell your friends, remember, subscribe to James Hershey's YouTube page. You can listen to all the new and old shows. If you need to get, shirts, memorabilia, all your swag gear, he'll tell you where to go. Cups, shirts, all kinds of stuff. He'll tell you what the site is that you can get all the stuff from. I want to thank you guys for listening to us for over almost 3 years now on Parax, over 2. I love doing these shows for you guys. We're gonna try to do. We're gonna keep doing steering, but we're gonna try to do something new. Has nothing to do with this kind of stuff. It's gonna be something different. But in a couple weeks, we'll be telling you about that more. But I hope you have a great night, misfits, sugar ladies, monster hunters, and demon lovers. I love you. Have a great night, and blessed be.
The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. Great channel. There's hundreds of videos there for you. It's your one-stop shop for paranormal. It's got everything. Please go there and subscribe to the channel and just enjoy it. It's 100% free and it's there for you to enjoy. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel, the link to the store is in the description. There's tons of different shirts and coffee mugs and cell phone cases and pillows and blankets and posters and all kinds of stuff there. We got a bunch of different designs. We're coming out with new designs every day, all kinds of cool shirts and all kinds of cool stuff. So If you're into merch and that's the kind of stuff you like, that's where you can find it. Thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you for all your support. And I hope that you enjoyed the show. This is one that is a question that's been bothering me for a long time, and it was silly. It's not the most groundbreaking research, but that's okay. Not all questions that are unanswered have to be serious questions. Sometimes it's a silly question, and that's what this was. And I think that I cracked the case on this one, and I think it was a hell of a fun show. Let me know down in the comments what you think. And as always, thank you so much, and we love you. Until we speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.